Well, I am so pleased to be here. How many here were Marines? How many were Navy? How many were Army? Any Air Force? How many are running in the marathon? Don't you know it's bad for your joints? Well, I want you to know that when President Kennedy was in the White House, Bobby Kennedy was over at the Justice Department, and he decided that everyone should run from the White House to Camp David. So he organized all of the staff in the White House and the Justice Department to run up there, and there was a good friend of mine who was President Kennedy's press secretary. His name was Pierre Salinger. And Pierre was portly. And the press, he went out to meet the press, and they asked him about this run from the White House to the Camp David. And Pierre told them about it. And they said, well, Pierre, are you going to run? And he said, no, I'm plucky, but I'm not stupid. Now, that is why I'm not running. Now, I have got nothing against Marines. I don't. Except one thing. I was in Mongolia a few months ago. I think you were there, Sarah. And we were in Ulaanbaatar in front of the embassy. And some Marine saw me. And he said, oh my gosh. He said, wait a minute. I'm going to go get the Marine guard that guards the... Oh my Lord, I almost knocked that over. I'm from Chicago. I must be half Italian. So he went in and he got all these guards, Marines, in their uniforms to come out and take a picture. And we took a picture. And I shook hands with them all. And I was proud to meet them all. And I thanked them all for their service, as I thank all of you for what you've done for our country. And then I said, and this is kind of in the vein of confession. They say it's good for your soul. I've never believed that, but I said to the Marines, you know, the Marines are part of the Navy Department. Big mistake. They said, yes, the men's division. I will never say that again. Ever. Well, now look, Ryan, thank you for your invitation and your hospitality. And Amy, it's fun to be with you. I appreciate your being here. I thank all of you who are supporters of this impressive organization that's doing so much. It's clear that you understand the importance of the example of service that Travis Manion represented for our country. I'm here because I am a fan and an enthusiastic supporter of the foundation. I really understand and value the motto that you have, and the idea that you honor the fallen by challenging the living. And I think that is a worthwhile endeavor. I wasn't surprised to hear that Travis's father was in the Marines, Colonel. My father was in the Navy as well. Kind of runs in the family, I guess, throughout the military, that very often you'll find people who have more than one member of the family who've served in the military. Um, I don't find that unusual at all. Back in the 1960s, I was a member of Congress, and I was a friend of I was representing a district in northern Cook County in Chicago and the suburbs north. And I came to know an economist at the University of Chicago named Milton Friedman, who was very active on school choice and choice in everything. And he talked me into introducing legislation in the 1960s to create the all-volunteer military, which I did. And there were a lot of good arguments for it, and there are some arguments against it. The arguments for it, we were, of course, bringing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the military with the draft, and people who didn't want to be there in some cases, people who did want to be there in other cases, and then they would leave within 18 or 24 months very often. And it was expensive. You ended up having a lot of people in the military who really didn't want to be there. We were able to pay them about 50, 60, 70% of the civilian manpower market, so it was cost effective if you think that's a good idea. The all-volunteer force, on the other hand, has been something that has created the finest military on the face of the earth. People who want to be there, people who are paid a competitive wage, we hope, people who stay there long enough to develop the skills and the talents and the ability to contribute so much to making our military what it is today. One of the great advantages of having a conscript military, however, is that a great many more people serve. So one of the disadvantages that I used to argue this when I was introducing the legislation, and one time I went to hear Milton Friedman talk about school choice, and he got up and he gave the whole talk against school choice. He told every argument against having options in school and where a person could decide where they wanted to go to school. And then he reversed it and told all the arguments in favor of school choice, put them on a scale and weighed them. And of course, the people listening came away understanding that he understood the arguments on both sides. And I used to do that when we were trying to get an all-volunteer force in this country by arguing both sides. I'd say, here are the arguments on one side, here are the arguments on the other side, and when I look at them, I come out and say that the arguments in favor of an all-volunteer military vastly outweigh the arguments in favor of a conscript military, where we say to people, we're going to take you whether you want to or not, but we're going to exempt women, we're going to exempt people who are in school, we're going to exempt people who are teachers, we're going to exempt people who want to go to Canada, and conscientious objectors, but the few number we're going to take. And then, by the way, we're not only going to take you, but we're going to pay you 50 or 60 or 70% of the civilian manpower market, and you're not going to be able to do what you prefer to do. And then you can leave after we've invested in you and trained you. Now, one of the arguments against the all-volunteer force is that today we have a society where very few people have served. And that's too bad, in a sense. I still favor the volunteer military, don't get me wrong. But when I worked in Congress in 1957, when I left the Navy, I looked at the backgrounds of all the people in Congress. Back in those days, they were almost all men, and almost all had served in the military. Today, you look at the backgrounds of the people in the Congress, or in journalism, or in business, or in education, and very few have served in the military. The other day, I met with a group of a veterans organization called Hill Vets. I'd never heard of them, and they came to see me, and I had a visit with them. And sure enough, these folks have decided that it's important to have veterans serving up on Capitol Hill because so many of the members of Congress haven't served. And they're exactly right. And what you're doing, you folks are doing with respect to schools and universities and education, students and teachers both, giving them access to people who've served in the military. And it is doing exactly what needs to be done if we have an all-volunteer military. So I thank you for what you're doing. I congratulate the people who are involved in the foundation, but also those of you here who supported. I think it is, as I say, I'm a believer in the all-volunteer military, but I'm also a believer in recognizing that one of the weaknesses is that not enough people really are around people who've served in the military, who understand sacrifice and service and character and the integrity and leadership and the value. When people come out of the military, and they often come by and visit with me, and we talk about what they might do next. I remember one day I was with a Marine general who was just getting out, and we had lunch, and I said, well, how's it going? And he said, well, I feel like I'm looking for a house and I don't have a real estate agent. and of course, the people he was talking to had no idea of the value that a person who served in the military brings to any organization, whether it's journalism or the law or business, the responsibility they get at a young age, the understanding what it's like to be a part of an organization and a team, and the relationships that evolve and develop, and how important teamwork is. So I think that this foundation is doing not just a good thing, but something that's vital and important and merits the support of everyone here and your friends and your neighbors. This mid-octogenarian decided to drive in from St. Michael's tonight to say thank you to all of you and encourage you and wish you well and express my appreciation for your invitation. Thank you very much.